The Vanishing Room. 1. The Arrival. The Blackwood Hotel stood alone at the edge of a deserted highway, swallowed by mist and the dying light of dusk. Ethan Moore pulled his car into the cracked parking lot, shutting off the engine and taking in the building's eerie presence. It was an old, towering structure, built in the early 1900s, one of those grand hotels meant for luxury travelers. But time had worn it down. The neon sign above the entrance flickered weakly, half the letters dead, so that it read, Black Ode. Ethan, a travel writer covering haunted locations, had booked a night here after hearing the rumors. Guests who checked in but were never seen again. A room that erased people from existence. Just stories, of course. Myths. And yet, as he stepped into the dimly lit lobby, he felt an unshakable sense of being watched. The receptionist, an older woman with ghostly pale skin, greeted him with an unsettling smile. "You're our only guest tonight, Mr. Moore," she said. She slid an old-fashioned brass key across the counter. Room 306. 2. The unsettling signs. The elevator was out of order, so Ethan took the creaking stairs up to the 3rd floor. The hallways stretched long and empty, the patterned wallpaper peeling at the edges, the air heavy with something unsaid. A single light flickered overhead as he stopped at room 306. He turned the key and stepped inside. The room was old-fashioned but well-kept. Heavy red drapes blocked out the outside world, and a large mirror stood across from the bed. Something about it felt wrong. Too clean, too polished. He ran his hand over the mirror's surface, expecting dust, but it was cold, almost like touching ice. A strange feeling crept up his spine. It was too quiet here. No distant traffic, no hum of other guests. Just his own breathing and the faint creak of the floorboards as he moved. That night, the disturbances began. At first, it was subtle, the faint sound of footsteps outside his door. A woman's laugh, distant and sweet. The doorknob rattling, as if someone was testing it. But when he looked through the peephole, nothing was there. 3. The Vanishing. At 3:06 a.m., Ethan was jolted awake by a loud, insistent knocking at the door. He sat up, pulse hammering. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate. He hesitated. The air in the room felt thicker, like something was pressing against his chest. Finally, he swung his legs off the bed and stepped toward the door. The moment he touched the handle, the knocking stopped. He took a deep breath and opened it. The hallway outside had changed. It was longer, impossibly long. The lights overhead buzzed and flickered, casting erratic shadows along the floor. Every other door along the hall was gone. Just an endless corridor stretching into darkness. And when Ethan turned to step back into his room, the door was gone. A wall stood in its place, smooth and unbroken, like the room had never existed. His breath hitched. He spun in place, trying to steady himself. What the hell? Then, from the far end of the hallway, something moved. A shadow, tall and wrong, unfurling itself from the darkness. It walked toward him, slow and deliberate, not quite touching the floor. Ethan turned and ran. 4. The hotel's secret. The hallway twisted in ways that didn't make sense, stretching into infinity. The doors he passed had no handles, no numbers. Then suddenly he saw it. A massive mirror at the end of the hall. His breath shuddered out of him as he skidded to a stop. In the mirror, he saw a group of people standing behind him. Pale, hollow-eyed, their faces blurred, as if they had been forgotten by time itself. He recognized some of them, faces from missing persons reports he had read about the hotel. And then he saw something else. Behind him, in the mirror, stood the bellhop, smiling. His reflection didn't move as Ethan did. It just grinned, its eyes dark as an abyss. Then the lights flickered out completely. A rush of cold air, a whisper, and then silence. 5. The next guest. The next morning, the receptionist sat behind the counter, her bony fingers flipping open the hotel's guest book. With a careful, looping script, she wrote the newest name, Ethan Moore. She smiled. The bellhop stood beside her, holding an old brass key. Room 306 was ready again. and the Blackwood Hotel awaited its next guest.